It is deeply unsatisfying for everybody that is watching this outside of the White House grounds. But for the president to say we're going to low-key it instead of saying we're going to destroy their civilization one day, or we're going to, we're going to give them $500 billion in an MOU, but instead just say what I think you and I have been saying for the most part, which is these people are, their government's an economic basket case. It was before the war. Actually having the discipline to sit back and let that leverage build may not be a bad idea.
Exactly right. It's also good, Joe, that he's no longer threatening to use military force. We've pounded Iran for 5.5 months. We have very little to show for it. And there's always the risk they'll retaliate against all the neighbors. So, quote unquote, low-keying it is the right way to go. So now we basically have a question of who can endure the status quo longer. Is the United States prepared to live with a semi-open or semi-closed Strait of Hormuz? How long is Iran prepared to live without the receipts it wants from its oil? But this is the way to play it. In the long run, I agree 100%. Iran's biggest vulnerability, its Achilles heel, is the mismanagement of its economy. And the MOU is extraordinarily vague. So questions of sanctions relief, frozen asset return, reparations, you name it. This is all to be negotiated. So the real question is Iran prepared to compromise to make a deal? And, we'll find out. And the president's got to decide how long he can stand the pain, again, of a closed strait.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan Lemire, and I know you're going to David Road, but just really briefly comment on, the president said something that sounded obviously interesting over the weekend, and I think a lot of people might have said, wow, he's just trying to cover his backside, and maybe he is, but just, again, negotiation-wise, if someone were advising him on how to play this out, as we've been saying all along, the Iranians see the midterm elections as his weakness, just as they saw Jimmy Carter's election against Ronald Reagan as his weakness. For the president saying, you know what, the Republicans are unpopular, that's their problem. I'm not worried about the midterms. Kind of passing that off. That, of course, that may change today. But as far as the negotiating stance goes, that's the best way to do it. We need to start taking leverage away from the Iranians. They think it's the midterm elections. They thought oil was going to go to 150 a barrel. It didn't. But to low-key it, to play the long game, something that Donald Trump doesn't usually do, actually strategically might be the best way forward in this case, because military options aren't going to do it. Threatening to destroy their civilizations is not going to do it. And giving them $500 billion in an MOU is not going to do it either.
There are some in the White House who have thought this was the right strategy all along, who have said that, look, it's about economic pressure, play the long game.
Yeah.
Now, we should note there have been U.S. intel reports that predicted the collapse of the Iranian economy months ago. That didn't happen. And I reported this last week as one of my more recent Atlantic pieces, that Iran has shown real resilience here. And that, yes, the White House does believe eventually they'll cave to this economic pressure, but they're no longer really sure when. They would have thought it would have happened already. But yes, this seems to be the best of a lot of bad options for the president, because nothing has worked to this point. He's been humiliated time and time again. Tehran's doing it for sport, where it feels like, hey, we're about to agree. Nope, and they yank it back. It's like Lucy with the football almost. And again, over this weekend, where the White House was preparing for almost like a legitimate victory lap, saying the strait's going to reopen, this war is over, they're going to gloss over the fact there was no progress made on the nuclear deal, and they were just going to try to turn the page, as Trump has wanted to do for such a long time. Iran, though, thumbed its nose yet again on that, says the strait is still closed unless you give us all these conditions, which, as you just outlined, are basically non-starters here. So, therefore, the president doesn't really have any other options, David Road, except to play this. Now, Iran is betting that he doesn't have the patience for the long game. And to this point, he hasn't. He wants to have a quick kinetic response. He wants to threaten violence, not follow through, occasionally drop some bombs. He wants to do anything he can to turn the page. Now it looks like he doesn't have a choice. He's backed himself into a corner, but he may have ended up with the best option. The issue is, can he stay with it? Can he and Republicans survive the economic pain and wait for Tehran to finally actually come to the table?
I spoke with an Iranian official late last week, and then over the weekend, they are convinced they have the upper hand. They're determined to go back to all these conditions that were talked about with the MOU, which is extraordinary. They're talking about like the withdrawal of American forces from the region, which the U.S. can't do, given what its allies in the regions have been through. So I do think this is the right sort of short-term step for Trump. But they just, the back and forth, the constant threats from the president. I mean, there's been nearly a dozen examples now of Taco, has emboldened the Iranians. That was the clear message I got from him. And I think you see also it has another impact in terms of Israel, where the Israeli government, Bibi Netanyahu, rejected this Trump administration peace plan. Jared Kushner has spent months and months on this, and that's a setback for President Trump. And that's the kind of danger here. The U.S. looks weak in the region, and so people are trying to exploit it.
Well, and Gaddy, the way we look stronger is by the president sitting back, like he said, we're going to low-key this. We're going to play the long game. I know that make our allies in Europe and across the world feel much better. And it's important that we remember, and you and I have talked about this before on the show, just how weak Iran's economy was before the war. They were on the brink of collapsing economically before the war. Now here we are. This has been going on since the end of February, the beginning of March. Obviously, they're not in better shape economically. And it seems to me, as far as leverage goes, if Donald Trump can continue doing what he said over the weekend, which is we're just going to sit back and wait, the Republicans can worry about the midterms themselves, that sends a message to the Iranians that he's not going to make a horrible deal for short-term political gain. What kind of message would that send to our allies? What kind of message would that send to the leaders in Iran?
Look, I mean, there's going to be a whole load of people heaving a sigh of relief that we're not on the brink of some kind of massive military campaign against Iran, both here in Europe, but also in the Middle East and even in Asia, where they're worried, obviously, about their energy prices. But, to be a little realistic, we are back kind of to the status quo ante, where President Trump is saying, I'm not really that worried about the nuclear program. We can wait that out. We're watching it. We keep this economic pressure on him. This sounds an awful lot like where we were in November, December, January of last winter. So, and meanwhile, you have more Iranian hardliners being elevated within Iran. Yes, the regime is under pressure economically and in more pressure economically because of they can't export, but they are pushing the hardliners, not the moderates, within their power structure. So that's the domestic politics back in Iran. David Drucker, I mean, when you look at the American politics of this, though, you have a war that is incredibly unpopular. You have job losses announced on Friday. You've got inflation still at 3.5%. You've got gas somewhere around $4 a gallon. How does the president help the Republican Party turn this around politically between now and November? Or does he just sit back, like Joe says, and say, that's your issue, not mine?
Right. So everything's great, right? I mean, the Republicans are in great shape.
So good.
Yeah, look, these are a lot of serious political challenges, and even though it may be useful internationally for the president to push the Republicans off and tell them they're on their own, it doesn't do them any favors, because his version of telling them they're on their own is for him to focus and talk about a million different issues, other than this one, by the way, which is an important one, that have nothing to do with voters' number one priority, and that's the economy. I'm a broken record on this. I keep saying it over and over, but voters give you demerits, one, for the performance of the economy, or the performance of any issue that they deem important. And they give you demerits for not focusing on it the way they think you should. And all of the data shows us that it's not just the president's handling of his job, but it's his lack of focus on the issues that voters care about most. And so I think this is really domestically for the president's party. The challenge is, are they able to at least compete with the president's megaphone when that megaphone is generally the loudest in politics and discussing a whole host of issues? And on the war, we'll see if the president can stick to any strategy for any length of time. But this has become a real political boondoggle. And on the one hand, it may do the United States some good if he can attempt another avenue for pressure on Tehran. But don't forget, the war was sold on this idea, to the extent it was sold at all, that 47 years of diplomacy was long enough and insufficient to deal with a nuclear weapons program that was an imminent sort of a threat. And so downplaying that now undercuts that, and it creates other questions that Republicans are going to have to deal with.
I was going to say that the cause of the war, the purpose of the war, was to get rid of the nuclear weapons, and that was the justification of the war while the war was going on. Mika, I just want to underline what David said. A Wall Street Journal article this morning, fascinating. We're going to be talking about it next block or two. It starts this way. Mitchell Brown, a Republican pollster, has noticed something new in focus groups that he runs in battleground states. They know exactly, to the dollar, the amount of their power bill, he said. The same, he says, happens with health costs or the price of beef. To Brown, it's a sign the views of the economy pose a clear threat for his party in this year's midterm. And the numbers are terrible about it. I think we have gotten to a point, though, in middle of August, where most people think, and I can tell you by the time Labor Day hits, people used to traditionally say, oh, it's a sort of campaign season. I knew when I was campaigning, by Labor Day, the cake was baked. You're running off the realities that everybody has going into the new school year when you're knocking on doors, when you're campaigning. And so Republicans, and this article talks about, are going to have a really hard time changing perceptions in the last month or two on the economy.
Absolutely.